Hey, Bill and Rob's listeners, we've got a new episode for you this week with special guest Mike Bedard of Cinema Singularity on Instagram and TikTok. He's a returning guest, and we have a wonderful time talking to him about RoboCop 2. Now, we're busting this one outside of the paywall because every time we have a guest, we like to put it out to the public. Please take time to listen, enjoy, show Mike some love, and if you really like this episode, I encourage you to listen to all of our episodes at patreon.com/BillAndRobs. Over at patreon.com/BillAndRobs, you can hear all of our episodes and see the video of the episodes. All of the money we get from Patreon goes directly back into producing this show, and we hope that you find value in this episode and show some support. Patreon.com/BillAndRobs.
Welcome to Bill and Rob's, an excellent adventure. I'm Bill Tilley.
And I am Rob Schulte, and today we have a returning guest. I know, everyone, pencils down. You'll want to pay attention to this one. If you listen to our episode on Garfield's Thanksgiving, maybe one of our highest downloaded episodes of all time, you already know that we've got an expert in our midst. It's Mike Bedard. Mike, Cinema Singularity is the handle, and Mike is the guest. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're advanced. We've got a shiny new hue to us, and we're in this new series. We just finished up our first series of 2024, Lady Killers, and now we're on to RoboCop. And Bill is thrilled. Bill's a car guy, so this is kind of a mix between both of us.
It is, and I'm especially thrilled because not only is our catalog diverse, we have guests whose IMDb page of Bill and Rob's would say things like, last episode, Garfield's Thanksgiving, this one, RoboCop 2. It's an amazing leap.
Quite the departure, yes.
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 But really, I'd say they're both in the world of wild media. And
Sure.
I believe it exists. But I wanted to be at the table when the people were pitching the ideas for both Garfield's Thanksgiving and RoboCop 2.
And I think there's a fair argument here is to actually say which one's the cartoon and which one isn't.
Or as I like to call this movie, RoboCop Blue. Hello, is this thing on? Is this thing... we'll get to it.
Lovely.
Yes.
Lovely.
Gents, I think we should dive right into it because I don't want to waste any more time. And Bill, we do that by reading the back of the VHS box, which I have found in my cavernous cellar out here in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And
that's a nice crisp one too, Rob.
Yes.
I don't see any dents or dings on that one.
Sometimes you just got to preserve the classics. And the back of this box goes a little something like this. The sizzling sequel to 1987's sci-fi blockbuster brings back the future of law enforcement, RoboCop. To face his greatest challenge ever, Peter Weller returns as the half-man, half-machine police officer. This time, to rid the lawless streets of Detroit of the deadly new designer drug, Nuke. Unknown to RoboCop, the evil corporate empire which created him wants to take the city private and develop RoboCop 2. See what we've done here? A newer, bigger, and more powerful version to replace the original. Wow. Mike, I'd like to ask you, what is your familiarity with the RoboCop series? And had you seen RoboCop 2 before we dive into our segments?
Very familiar with the RoboCop series. I think like most nerds, I love the first one. It's been a long time since I've seen RoboCop 2. I remembered not liking it very much. But I rewatched it for this, and it occupies an interesting space because it's not as good as the first RoboCop. Obviously, most movies aren't, but it's not as bad as I remember it. Mm-hmm. There are certain things that I think really work, and I think it's just when it's compared to the first RoboCop, it can't help but feel like a massive letdown in that regard.
Yes, no matter how, and we'll get into it, but you can tell that they tried. They tried to do things to keep this in the same spirit, in the same vein. We don't have Verhoeven, but we still have stop motion, even though technology has advanced in the past 3 years. And I can give it credit there. But Bill, what about you? How did RoboCop and then in turn RoboCop 2 take the scene for you as a young lad?
I saw all these first run out, so I don't know for sure. I'm pretty sure I did see RoboCop before I saw RoboCop 2 because I had that frame of reference. But this is 1990, so I was 17 at the time and an avid comic book reader deep into this. And my biggest thing was when I saw Frank Miller's name come up on the screen, I was like, oh, that's interesting because I've got enough knowledge at this point. So I also remember, I think of RoboCop 2 as, it's not corny, but I think we'll say this word a lot. It's a cartoony sequel to me.
Yeah.
Things are overblown, but you see the remnants of the first movie, and I'm with Mike. I didn't care much for it the first time, but on a repeated watch, you can find some joy in here. But that might be because it does adhere so much to the first movie that you're feeling nostalgic for it. I know we might have to get into that, but I do know that compared to what's coming next, this was a joy to behold.
Now, listeners know that I chose the RoboCop series. Mike, we're doing RoboCop 1, 2, 3. We're going to do the remake. We're going to watch the pilot to the Canadian TV show. And then we're going to cover a little bit of the new video game, Rogue City, that came out. Maybe not in that order, but we're going to do that. But I had realized I was very excited about this and had only seen RoboCop, the first one. So maybe this will be a journey of self-discovery as well as robot cop discovery, and we'll see. I had never seen RoboCop 2. I'm glad I did. It gave me a chuckle more than once for both chuckly reasons and for silly reasons, but I did still feel like it was a decent take on a continuation of the story. Do I think the story could have gone a different route? And did the movie try and take the story in a different route and decide to diverge in another Robert Frost path? Maybe. But we'll find out. Bill, I think we should dive into our patented segments, though. And I'm choosing for fun facts to call this one Choose the Brain. Right? Because they're facts. Get it? Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yeah.
And Bill...
It's a very brainy movie.
I got it.
Thank you. See, listeners, this is just a little piece of advice here. Get the heady jokes. Get the ones that make people go, I got it, and smirk at you like your co-host, Bill. That's when you know you've won the comedy game. Now, Bill, would you like to go first with your fun fact?
Yeah, apparently I'm going to have to talk to Adler about making some kind of smirk audio drop because that shortchanges the podcast audience a little bit. But sure, I'll go first. Neat thing about these movies, RoboCop's popular, so there's no shortage of facts once again in this thing. So try to find something different. Hopefully I did. But last movie, Detroit was substituted with Dallas. That was its filming location. Mm-hmm. This time around, they went to Houston, so they kept it in Texas. But apparently the initial response was to go back to Dallas and pick it up. But Dallas was less than enthusiastic about the RoboCop team coming back to film in their city. Probably something to do with the massive amounts of explosions and problems and bullets and noise and people phoning in complaints. But yeah, they were like, you can come back, but you basically can't do any of the RoboCop-y stuff. And they're like, well, that's not good.
No.
So I don't know what was going on down the road in Houston. I didn't have time to look it up, but apparently they were all for blowing up anything and everything they wanted to. So they were like, Nope. Come on down to Houston. We will happily be the new Neo Detroit for your RoboCop movie.
And that's on the Welcome to Houston signs, right?
It should be. I wish city signs should have a lot better facts than like mayor or established. It's like, filming location of RoboCop 2 should be right on the sign at the Houston city limits.
Oh, God. I love that. Mike, did you find any fun facts?
I did. So we mentioned earlier that Frank Miller, who wrote The Dark Knight Returns, many other famous comic books, wrote the screenplay for RoboCop 2. And I found out that they also approached Alan Moore to potentially write RoboCop 2. Alan Moore having written Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and notoriously just hates Hollywood. So it should come as no surprise they approached him, and he was just like, I don't want to do that. But like now I can't help but wonder what an Alan Moore take on RoboCop would have been.
Oh man. I kind of want to see that.
Yeah. I at least want to hear Alan Moore talk about what he would have done. Because we know he wouldn't make the movie. I will say this, for Christmas years ago, and I wish I still had it. I think I sold it in my like broke college kid days, but I also obtained this when I was in college. So draw your own conclusions, folks. I got the Alan Moore book that was like Dorothy and Alice and like the three, I can't remember who the other one was, but like, princess stories. And it was like his retelling of it, which was actually like their sexual awakenings. And I did not know that's what it was when I got it. And to have that now would be amazing. And I can only imagine if a RoboCop Alan Moore story was like some government allegory and also RoboCop's sexual awakening, I think would be amazing. Because I'm also a huge fan of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, which I could see this being like the urban Swamp Thing something or other, but that's great. That's great.
I can guarantee you that the RoboCop data spike would no longer come out of his hand if Alan Moore wrote the script.
I found out that you remember the scene in this movie when the RoboCop's kind of like malfunctioning, or that they did the committee of like what they wish RoboCop would be and make him more peaceful, and he's like helping the kids, they're spray painting him, everyone's hating RoboCop. He then sees the guy smoking and like just fires bullets around his head and thank you for not smoking. That was actually used as a PSA before movies, like that whole season. Like they cut that into a like, because some theaters you could still smoke in 1990, and this was that wave of like, actually we're just going to cut smoking out of like every public building, and that was the PSA, and I love that. I want to show that, like go to the draft house, and I want that to be something before a film these days.
Such a different time that we lived in, where somebody just looked at that piece of film and went, that's cool. Yeah. Let's just use it for this. No thought at all about its social or political implications.
Yeah. I love it.
What a heady time.
I like that how that was the precursor to the Nicole Kidman AMC ad. Like instead of like going out of your way to film this thing with Nicole Kidman, it's just like, yeah, let's just cut the RoboCop 2, and that's how we'll introduce people to this movie. That's completely unrelated to RoboCop.
We like doing reboots. Let's get Nicole Kidman on the phone and redo this with her in the armor.
Or just the gun.
Just the gun. Yeah.
Bill, what's your other brainy fun fact?
So we marked last time about, the RoboCop suit. Of course, it's the first movie and all the stuff they had to do to get it through. But I saw an interview with Peter Weller, and he said by RoboCop 2, they had actually managed to get his change out of the suit time down to like 10 to 15 minutes.
Insane.
They redid the whole thing in fiberglass. They had a bolt, like probably Velcro system onto the stuff. And it's just, he was in and out of it. And you think he talked about being 3 hours in and sometimes 3 hours out. I mean, he really goes to show you the suit looks great. We can debate the paint job later, but overall, like it looks as good, if not a little better than the first movie. In a lot of ways, its construction holds up. Like they'd managed to do this and not sacrifice any quality that I could see on the suit. So that was that was really an amazing accomplishment by the Robo team.
Yeah. Especially all the ups and downs we learned about that suit and what it was supposed to be. Apparently, you're supposed to be like a ninja, like Metal Gear Solid 2 style suit.
But that is classic. Everybody might think they know what they're doing, but they really don't, and they don't have your script finished, so we don't know what we're going to do here.
Yeah.
So I would have been. I couldn't have done it. I am too much of a planner to be like, I haven't worn the thing and you want to film in it. There's no way. But I don't know. Weller's movements seem a little more fluid than they did in the last movie. And it's probably because his suit's more comfortable.
Yeah.
And maybe that helped him be a little cheerier for this weird dialogue that he had to deliver.
Well, Mike, I'm seeing in the doc your second fact here, and I like it, and I'm going to let you go last because I'm just going to say my quick one real quick. When Juliet Fax is going through the death row inmates for RoboCop 2, the first picture you see is the director, Irvin Kershner, and I missed that first time around. Maybe because I am not used to seeing him in his sleek 1990s look and not his headshot we see nowadays.
Always love to see Easter eggs, even if you don't know they're Easter eggs at the time.
Yeah. And
I wish I could find and do a featurette of the commercial for the guy that loses the account and commits suicide at his desk. And there's a picture behind him of what is supposed to, I guess, be his daughter. I want to know, who is this girl?
Yeah.
Does she now know that that's her in the picture? When they watch this movie, she's like, oh, God, that's my photograph every time. What's her story?
It also makes me think of the Simpsons. Is it the 138th special episode where they give fake facts about the Simpsons? And they say when Maggie gets scanned that the checkout number is NRA forever.
Whoa.
I believed that for longer than I should have as a kid.
Nice.
Well, but Mike, tell us your last brainy little fact here. This is kind of fun.
Yeah, my last fun fact has nothing to do with RoboCop technically, but I used to work at a bookstore in Woodland Hills, California. And one of my coworkers was in an art history PhD program with Peter Weller. People may not know this. Peter Weller actually has a PhD in art history. I believe he got it in 2014.
Incredible.
Which would have been, so I worked there right before then. And so I don't know why Peter Weller called a store. My coworker's phone was broken for a period of time. And they were, do you still have homework in PhD programs? They had to work on something together.
Yeah.
So every so often, Peter Weller would call the store, and if I was at the register, I would answer, and then I would just hear RoboCop on the other end of the phone say "Is so and so there?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, hang on a second," and I would have to waver down to be like, "You have a phone call from Peter."
You have 20 seconds to answer this call.
That's awesome because he sounds like a really fun guy on top of being super educated, which that would make me weep to be like, can we just have another couple of minutes of conversation before you
can I help you with your homework, Mr. Weller?
Is there any books you're looking for? Anything I can help you
realized I should have done that. I should have been oh, she's in the back room, she'll be a minute. So what was it like to film RoboCop? Yeah. Just chat him up for a minute until she got there.
I heard you did a lot of mime work for RoboCop 1.
Audible groan on other end of receiver.
Did you pick out the art for RoboCop 2?
So I'm really a fan of Buckaroo Banzai. Which is true, I am.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next segment. It's things that we liked in this film. It's called Nice Shootin', which I feel like was what I had it last time, and I thought I changed it, but we're just going to roll with it this time, gentlemen. I'll go first. I love, and I said this at the top, the titular RoboCop 2 still uses stop motion, and you know that that's a decision because they also throw in the Lawnmower Man-esque graphics for the Kane face from time to time whenever we get that. So they wanted to do reboot style animation, but someone was like, it just looks terrible we must at least go back to the Ed 209 stop animation for this. And I think it was a good choice. Bill, did you like the stop animation as well? Did you want to see it take the stairs?
No, I don't like to see too much repeat. This movie's done enough of that. But one of the things I like about it is it doesn't skimp on the action.
Yes.
You know, the story may not be all that deep, but we get to see RoboCop doing a lot of RoboCop-y stuff, which is a good thing. You know, I always say that's what brung you to the theater, so you want to see it. And they did really good work all in all. Like, they used some puppets and some miniature effects in the stop motion. And it works really good for the time. It looks probably as good as anything else because they had so many pros still on the job in spite of a lot of the cast shuffles. I think a lot of the team that actually did the work stayed on board and they just kept plugging away. And for what it is, like RoboCop 1, it doesn't give you a lot of Ed 209, and he's your main mechanical antagonist. So his real opposition is Boddicker and Jones, and they're human. But this time we get to see him really duke it out with some very odd looking machinery, but machinery nonetheless. So I love that part.
Yeah, same. Mike, how about you? What's something that you liked about it?
I like just the entire sequence where they have the committee meeting with like the parents saying like, oh, like RoboCop should be for kids. And then they like reprogram him with all these new directives to be like more family friendly. So he's like, he drives the speed limit and I really liked it on this second watch recently because it kind of like this meta commentary on what RoboCop was at the time, because this came out in 1990. I think 1989 was when the first RoboCop cartoon for kids came out. Yes. And even then there was like lunchboxes for RoboCop. Like he was like, it's like in the first RoboCop was like an R-rated, like very violent social satire movie, like not for kids, but like kids, was like marketed kind of towards kids. And so like having that whole sequence feels like it's kind of commenting on that of like, oh, well, if you actually made RoboCop for kids, he would suck and no one wants that. And then like he gets electrocuted or whatever and like goes back to being RoboCop. And it's kind of like just like, nah, yeah, we're not going to like make RoboCop for kids. Like we're just going to have him like shoot people and like be a badass.
Well, and not only that, the kid in this movie hates RoboCop and shoots him in the head. Like, and the other kids spray paint him, you know?
I feel like the people, when they did that with all those directives, not only should he have like a explicit lyrics stamp on his armor somewhere, but it almost feels like somebody took the idea and went, what if the 60s Batman was turned into a robot? Like if you don't look past it, it almost like Adam West could have delivered this dialogue because it is so sincere and so over the top with that kind of thing. And of course it freaks me out when I watch it every time.
Bill, what freaks me out is that you still have a like left. What do you got?
Well, let me reach down to my thigh as my fact comes out of my gun holster and shoots it off.
All right, this is a family show, Bill.
Well, you know, ask Alan Moore about that. We'll have him rewrite the whole thing. I like Dan O'Herlihy. I think he's so much fun to watch. He was great in the last movie as the old man. Comes in this movie, still doesn't have a name. Love that they just kept that up. I have a feeling they just went, hey, after the first movie, we never gave him a name. I'm like, just keep it. It's great. Like, he doesn't, for me, nail sinister villain. And that's a little thing I'll probably get to later about how this movie's laid out. But he does really act the crap out of everything that he's got on screen. He plays his part so straight with just glimpses of over-the-top kind of mania to sort of, I guess, maybe anchor himself in the kind of movie this is. But he does the thing by playing it straight of giving you the illusion of reality, air quotes, of this universe. And his moments, like when he screams out, behave yourselves, as RoboCop and RoboCop 2 are fighting out, like you could see that. That's his character. He's just like, I've had enough of this. And as he walks out of the building, he gingerly but purposefully steps over a lady's body laying in the doorway. He doesn't look down. He doesn't really register it. He's just like, nope, don't have time for that. I mean, it's just so bad that it's good. And you really like watching whatever he does with this dialogue. Because part of me is like, I don't remember the movie well enough to go if he's going to go over the top on this one or if he's going to play it cool. So that was the great part. The only thing that really struck me is I got to wonder what it was like when they said, you're going to do a scene in the hot tub with Belinda Bauer. And this is what it's going to look like. And he's like, okay, I guess that sounds fun.
Yeah, I totally get you. And I'm going to pull an audible, Bill, because I also originally had one that's like, I kind of like that they made the old man more of a direct villain in this one. But I also kind of like him just being the sinister head of a company. So part of me doesn't like that. So what I'm going to go with my other like is, you also saw it in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which came out the same year, I believe, 1990. The like kids who are bad have like the coolest place to hang out. Like, I want to go to the arcade that they're all hanging out that RoboCop tries to bust. I want to go to the Foot Clan lair in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I want Sam Rockwell to give me menthol or extra strength cigs. I want these things that these kids have. And you know what? If it also gets me off the streets, maybe it's not all that bad. So I just think the way they represented these things in early 90s movies of like the bad kids hanging out at the arcade. And it's like, you're actually making this look really cool.
Quick question. Are there any good kids in this movie?
Aha.
Every child on screen is psychotic.
Yeah. It's part of the culture they're growing up in, Bill.
I guess so. I guess the only good kid is Murphy's original son, and he's only good because he rides his bike past camera and does nothing else for the rest of the movie. So if he's bad, we don't see it. But these kids are wildly homicidal.
Oh man. Well, Mike, what's your other like for this film?
I also like, and this might sound strange, but I like the horrific sequence where they're like showing the video footage of them trying to make other RoboCops.
Yes.
And then these other RoboCops just like immediately like scream and kill themselves.
Rip their own heads off.
The first one finds like a gun and like shoots people and then itself. And then the other one like tries to like tear its head off and you see like the skull. I don't know. We kind of touched on this where it feels like RoboCop 2 is trying and failing to kind of match the heights of the first RoboCop, but that sequence feels like RoboCop to me. Yes. It's like, oh, this is like very dark, like actually diving into like and confirming that like Alex Murphy is just this like anomaly.
Yeah.
But like if you try to do this again, like of course like they would just be like, what is this? It's this weird like body horror, cosmic horror type of thing.
Yeah, totally. I love that sequence. It really, I think it set the tone for what the movie could be, right? And I think it misses the mark, and I'll have more on that in a little bit. But, I believe our buddy Graham had told us that and I think this is also in his Letterboxd review, that, going off of your thought there, Mike, his trajectory for RoboCop 2 would be to have Lewis then become the next RoboCop from the first movie, right? Like she gets injured, now they're like a buddy cop team of RoboCops. And I feel like if that would have been the route, like you could actually lean into more of the tone, doing more of the same but different, like they like to tell you in Hollywood. But
I love the nugget of this scene.
Yeah.
I could see it because that's where I would have figured RoboCop 2 would have gone. Like, in the movie, and they've got the technology, they can build more RoboCops. Of course, they'll be different. And, it can't all be good. Like, it's a horrible transition. What could go wrong with this? Murphy trying to become more of his old self, new people coming in and getting it fresh. My only problem is these designs are clearly drawn by 6-year-olds. Mm-hmm. They're the weirdest looking robotic designs. They've got, lights on the bubble lights on the back of one, and they RoboCop's an amazing design, and if you'd wanted to take it more that dark, serious route, they would have really needed to up their game. It comes off great for comedy in this one, but they're so different. It feels like they pulled out all the concept drawings and just went like, we're just going to go with this, animate this, and it'll be fine. And which for me made it a little less scary because it was ridiculous, but overall it was still a pretty great scene.
Totally, but not everything was great in this film. And, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and so are the dislikes, which I'm calling, isn't it a school day? Because we all hate school. Hello.
You can't see it, but right now Mike is spray painting on the back of Rob with his paint can.
Yeah, well.
As he slowly turns the knob on the hydrant.
It is what it is. Okay. And you know what, Mike? Why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah. Again, kind of touched on this, but like overall, it just feels like watered down. Like especially like the commercials. Like if the commercials feel like they felt like they had to be there because RoboCop had like these parody, like satirical commercials. And so like, well, we just got to put that through. And then there's like the sunscreen commercial where they, to address like how the ozone layer is like gone in California, I guess. So no one can be in the sun longer than 20 seconds. And then the first one with like, the car theft Magnavox or something.
Magnavolt.
Like, Magnavolt, yeah. If like someone steals your car, they just like get electrocuted. And it's like, it's kind of like, it's fine. It's whatever. Yeah. But like, it just feels like it's like, okay, you're trying to like get to that RoboCop level. And it's just, again, and so much of RoboCop is just Paul Verhoeven. And, I think Irvin Kershner is a good director, but like, just, I don't know, it's such like that singular Verhoeven vision and it just can't reach it.
Yeah. Especially like starting with that commercial for the movie it's too far. The suicide one is also like, I hate to say it, but like silly, but it does kind of feel like a dystopian commercial you might see. The one where it's like, you try and steal my car and we'll just kill you with the service. It's just like, I see what you're doing, little over the top. This was also the era of The Club, which was huge. So I get the attempt at satire. It's just not nearly as good as saying that Reagan's Star Wars system accidentally malfunctioned and killed a population of California or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think we really see the lack of the original writer's vision and Verhoeven's vision, because he'd said in the earlier interviews about how like I show the world as I see it and as it could be, good or bad. And all the stuff in RoboCop 1 was extreme, but it wasn't beyond the realm of possibility. Mm-hmm. It was still playing off that, where RoboCop 2 starts, and I don't care what your future is, we're not going to be able to legally sell a car system that electrocutes somebody who's trying to steal it. It really pushes the movie up off the starting block and be like, oh, okay, that's pretty wild.
Does strain credulity a little bit there. Another thing that, something I didn't really like here, and it's in that same tone, but there's like a subtlety to the first movie. Like, it's very over the top in a lot of ways. And we talked about the quote where it's like fascism for liberals that the producer said. But there is like a little bit of like, if you are ignorant, not stupid, to certain like cultural issues, political issues, whatever, you could see RoboCop as just a fun action movie with some silly scenes in between. Even with a little bit of more knowledge, some things could still go under the radar for you. That's completely void in part 2. Like, what you see is what you get. These commercials are a total example of that. The scene of all of the, they tell you, in the scene you're talking about, like, it's fun. They're trying out to make RoboCop 2, but they're also just telling you why they're not working. She wants to get another RoboCop. She's in Fax is head of the department now, and she's going to get the guy addicted to drugs, because if he's addicted to drugs, then we can control him. It's like, okay, you're painting it on pretty thick here, and I just needed a little bit of subtlety for it. How about you, Bill? Anything? I mean, I know it's hard to believe, but is there anything you disliked in the film?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. It's definitely not subtle, and that lack of subtlety. It breaks that tenuous thread of suspicion, or it breaks that thread of suspension of disbelief that you desperately need to see all the stuff you see in the first one, which is kind of sad. And one of those things that breaks it for me is the characters of Mayor Cusack and Kane.
Yeah.
The mayor of Detroit and the main villain of the film. Cusack drives me crazy. I don't have anything against the actor, but when I see him, I think of Ruby Rod in The Fifth Element. Like he's kind of spastic. He's all over the place. He's not a villainous mayor or even a desperate mayor trying to play both sides to save his city, which is what he's doing in the movie. But there's no subtlety to it, and he just kind of looks ridiculous. And at one point, he feels bad, sort of. The next moment, he's going along with something crazy and illegal. I just can't get behind him, and he's in the movie so much that I need to get behind him somehow, and they don't really let me do it. And he just comes off as a character. I almost wish that they had just, like the first mayor, just don't let him talk.
Yeah.
And he's just out of it. He's so ineffective, it doesn't matter. And Kane kind of falls in that category too for me. He's no Clarence Boddicker. He's no Dick Jones. He's not really anything other than a drug lord.
And he's not in the movie very much.
No, he's not in the movie very much. We're told that he's super bad and that things he's done have been terrible, but it doesn't play off as menacing. And it might be because when I look at him, all I can think of is it looks like they tried to get John Malkovich and he was busy. I don't know Tom Noonan, nothing against him. I think he does the best he can with this role, but he has a very John Malkovich look. And it made me think, if they just kept all the dialogue but got John Malkovich to deliver it, I think that would have really made it better. So I guess in a way I'm knocking his performance, but I mean, that really comes down to script. So I can't get behind what is a character they're pushing on me. And I can't get behind the major villain of the piece. I guess OCP in its structure is always a villain, but there's like the street level villain and that's who he plays. And I don't think he's very effective at the part.
And I think this is a good time to point out, we talked about Frank Miller. Like, this is obviously, like, whatever script it started about, this is not a Frank Miller script by the end.
Right.
And Frank Miller did eventually get to go write Frank Miller's RoboCop as a comic book. And apparently it's fantastic. So I need to pick that up because I want to know what Frank Miller really wanted to happen with the RoboCop series. But to round out this dislike section, it's a school day, as we all know. Mike, what's your last one?
My last one is just the movie as a whole. Like, nothing really changes. Like, everything is just kind of resolved. Not to foreshadow anything, but like, there's a little bit of like Murphy's wife, and that's just like dropped immediately. Mm-hmm. We get like Murphy's change, the kid-friendly programming, that's just dropped immediately. By the end, it's just like they stop Kane. They like save the day, but like OCP's still there. The city is still a cesspool. It's just kind of like nothing really happened.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, I mean, yeah, there's a big shootout, but it's just kind of like, it feels like the movie spins its wheels to kind of keep things going. Maybe that's where like the Frank Miller screenplay influence comes from, because it does almost feel like that a 4 or 5 issue comic book where it's like where you have the running thread of Kane throughout.
Yeah.
But issue 1, you have the thing with his wife. Issue 2, you have the kid friendly, and then there's kind of like a little piece to like each of these parts, and then like the one driving force, but that driving force is kind of ultimately, like, in the grand scheme of Detroit and RoboCop, just kind of passed away, and it's like, well, we're just gonna have to do this next week, I guess.
Yeah. And I think you make a really good point that like it is like set up in like an arc form. Like, it could be a comic book like Frank Miller, it could be a mini series, it could be all of these things. But like, yeah, the problem is that they don't actually close out half of the things they start, and that's my big thing is, and I'll just use the example of Murphy's wife and kid. Like legitimately, like that is our driving force for the first like 15 minutes of the movie. And you think there's going to be this anything that happens with it, but no, it is immediately dropped. And really, like I watched this movie in 2 sittings, and the second half when I was watching it, I was like, oh, I'm waiting for this thing to come back with his wife. Didn't that just happen? Nope.
And maybe you could help me, guys, because I've seen this movie a few times. The bit with the wife, they have him in the cage and they're telling him, you know, you can't keep going by your old house. It's not your house. You're not a human, blah, blah, blah. She sees you. She's going to sue us. And then she's just there in the police station. Like they brought her there. They were telling him not to go see her. And yet they brought her to the station so this could play out. And I just,
she
weird.
Wants to, when no one's around, she's like, are you there or whatever? And he gives her the like cold, I'm cold. This was made in the honor of your late husband. And then he like sees her through the window. She's like, no, I must go back in there. And so it's like, what story are we telling here?
Yeah. It's such a letdown because there's so much emotion that was brought up in this first movie and so many consequences that they could have weaved these together. And it just didn't happen. It makes me sad.
I see. But Bill, did anything else make you sad?
Yeah, and I'm with all of you, of course. So the stunted development of this movie frustrates me. And somebody actually put together a video that's like comparing all the similar elements from 1 and 2. Like there's so many trips to the factory. He gets torn apart. He gets dumped. He gets put back. This happens. There's, right down to OCP's desire to build a second city, which they don't call Delta City for some reason. Like you got to the end of the last movie and did you just reset and we're going to do this all over again with the model and everything? But the biggest thing that got me out of this movie was I missed the Dick Jones, Bob Morton dynamic.
Yeah.
The old man and Johnson and Fax, their interplay is no substitute for this because those two were battling out in a corporate way. And that was the whole part of the satire and the humor and the fear that Verhoeven used with these actors in this script. It's like, they are corporate rivals. Everything they're doing, they're not murderers per se. They're not out to kill a bunch of specific people or take out a specific place. They're trying to gain a boardroom position. And this is RoboCop, and everything that happens around it is the fallout of that position. Now, of course, Dick Jones does get to commit murder at the end, and that's what drives him over the edge. But this gave everything this real malevolency, and almost it's one of those things you could see like, okay, this is standard corporate power brokering taken to the extreme. This is terrifying. And all that gets played for comedy this time around, for the most part. And that's where I say Dan O'Hurley, he does his best with what he's got. But, it's Johnson. Johnson was comic relief before. So not having that there and making it so over the top and then having the moments just like, having Sergeant Reed and the cops are still relatively realistic. It's all juxtaposed and just seems out of place in it. It just jars me out of the movie every time. But there needs to be a real bad guy like a Dick Jones in this movie, which there isn't really one. And that, I think, is its biggest suffering. Yeah.
One thing that I'm going to say is an honorable mention to my dislikes, but I feel like the movie doesn't have a clear point it's trying to make the way RoboCop 1 did, so I'm not going to say this is a total dislike, but like it's very interesting to see that RoboCop and Lewis are scabs at the beginning of this movie.
Right. That is barely addressed.
Yeah. Like your entire union is on strike and you still have to catch the drug dealers living on the street.
Yeah, I weep for Nancy Allen in this movie because Lewis is criminally underused in this movie. They just give her next to nothing to do, really. She needed a kick-ass moment to go along with this. Even if she'd been, it would have been neat to see her have a meeting with the other officers and talk about what this is all about. But that just didn't fall into the plan.
Yeah, it doesn't really, like, Lewis scabbing does it. Like, RoboCop, I don't know. I guess you could say, like, well, he's programmed to scab or something. Right. But, like, Lewis? Like, why?
What,
Like they're gonna kick your ass when the strike's over.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and there are police officers. Some of them didn't strike, and some of them did. Like you're never really given. I mean, you get the whole we're cops, we don't strike, but some of them did. So that was an odd dynamic that played out very strangely on screen.
Another thing that's like that could have been a great like 2 arc of the whole trade paperback that comes out of Frank Miller's RoboCop.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to get into the interpolitics of police unions on this podcast. That's for our other podcast, everyone. We'll show you the link if you email us. But we are going to talk about one of our last segments on this show, and that would be the things we found amusing, and it's the thought that counts. I will go first on this one, and I am definitely going to point out that when RoboCop and RoboCop 2 are fighting on the large building and fall off, we get a whistle sound like Wile E. Coyote falling off of a cliff on the cartoons. They might as well thrown in the Howie scream or the Wilhelm scream while this was happening.
Yeah, if RoboCop 2 had just had a port open with a placard sign that popped out that said "Yipes,"
Yeah.
that's all it was missing.
Do you think the whistle is a part of the scene? Like, do you think
is
they
it
programmed
diegetic or
RoboCop
not?
2, not diegetic or non-diegetic,
Yeah.
of like RoboCop or RoboCop 2, or both of them were programmed as like, hey guys, it'd be really funny if like we just like gave them a little whistle just in the event they fall off a tall building, they can make that little woo sound. Like,
Yes.
That way you can hear them coming and get out of the way.
Yeah, that would be the logical thing. It's like we need to put like an airflow system to that if they're falling at terminal velocity, someone is alerted.
That's amazing.
What about you, Mike? What's one of the things you found amusing?
it's just that. So there's like the sequence where the RoboCop 2 prototypes like kill themselves, and like I think one steals a gun and like shoots a cop and then shoots itself, and then there's the actual RoboCop 2 that like has the big fight with Murphy at the end and just has like a bunch of weapons, which in the first RoboCop, when they do like the boardroom presentation for the robot, it like shoots a guy.
Yeah.
Like they just gave it ammunition like when it was just supposed to do like a prototype demonstration. And that obviously went badly. And now when they're working on the RoboCop 2s, it's like there are still just like guns around and they still give them weapons when it's like, hey, maybe like let's make sure these things work before having guns anywhere near them. Like let's just because this is obviously like has gone badly.
That is so true. And one funny thing about that is I did watch the first couple episodes of the cartoon, the kids cartoon, and the like Ed 209 equivalent scene in that is that they've established Ed 209 as a traffic cop, and he's like, you must stop, and they like stop for him, and then it's like, no, I am stopped, don't come after me, and he just chases this person in a convertible and like crushes their car up, and the humans of course escape. But I was like, that is just so funny that like the cartoon got it right because they had to for children. But like just even in this film, seeing that like the people can't get it right, and they're just like, nah, just get it locked and loaded. We got to show people what's up.
I wrote down in huge capital letters, have they learned nothing?
Yeah. How about you, Bill? What's one of your amusing moments?
So I love the little nuke dispensers, and I couldn't figure out why. Because I'd seen them before, and I'm looking at them. Something's awfully familiar about this. And I finally realized they look exactly like my cat's flea medicine that I have to put on his neck. They're the exact same shape. You squeeze them, they do the same thing. And I thought, I really am going to have to applaud the illegal drug industry on this one, because they're finally giving everybody nice, clean dispensers for their product. They did none of this. Got to find some dirty spoons and some needles and stuff. All nicely packaged, easy little, put it right on the skin of the neck. It's just, And it was even funnier because Kat was laying there on the floor while I was watching this movie, and I'm just glancing from him to the thing, and I'm going, oh yeah, that reminds me.
Yeah.
Got something for you, buddy.
Yeah.
It's coming your way.
And now you're calling his flea medication Nuke from here on out, right?
Funny thing is, you give it to him, and then he whistles every time you throw him off a roof.
Oh,
So,
well.
strangest side effect I've ever seen.
Very interesting. Well, I will say that my other amusing moment is it's like the cultural reference of the time. And that is that for some reason they've put a 12-year-old as like a drug lord. And it really makes no point. And I think the more we've talked about it this episode, the more I'm seeing Mike's point of like this RoboCop toy empire that came out, with the lunch pails, like you said, and all of that they're like, oh no, this is us just like inserting that kid in here, or what we do with the other kids. But I also think that there was like a committee, like we saw in this movie, that were like, no, we need to show the dangers of drugs and what could happen to your kids. Like, this could happen. Not only could your kid get addicted, your kid could live a life of crime and run an underground syndicate at some point. Wouldn't you hate that, parents?
It's a great message. I need something about this kid's backstory. He's just there.
He's got too nice of combed hair for a kid.
Yeah, I mean,
like, it's just not gonna happen.
Is he Kane's kid? Is he some kid that he recruited? What is his story and why is he here? Because he's like a bowling ball through a plate glass window when you figure out what he is in this movie. Like, why would you not give this backstory? It's got to be insane.
Yeah.
And your movie's already insane.
Yeah.
I want to throw something to you guys. Do you think, to like tie up some loose ends, like they introduce like Murphy's family for the first 15 minutes and then kind of move on? Would the movie have been any better if like Murphy's son had been affiliated with like the drug empire?
Oh.
Like maybe there's like a kid like involved
Brilliant.
with the drug. Maybe we don't see him at first. And then in, end of Act 2, Murphy comes face to face with like the face of nuke drugs, and it's his son, and now that kind of like triggers some of the humanity left in him.
Oh, it would be amazing. Can you imagine the horror if he's following his family and that kid goes in a back alley and he sees Kane and it's like, 2 and 2. That's an amazing punch up, Mike. I love
his
it.
own kid shoots him in the head. Like, this is you know what? Let's not remake RoboCop 1. Well, they did, and it's weird, but like, let's remake RoboCop 2. I think worthy. And
let's not remake RoboCop 1 again. Let's just get straight to 2.
Yes.
Everyone knows RoboCop. They know the origin. Let's just
we don't need that.
This is our pitch for RoboCop 2.
2.5.
This ain't the Fantastic Four. We can skip that 5th origin movie. We're good.
Well, and also I think this is just a bigger, Hollywood, I know you're listening. Like, this is a bigger thing. You want to remake something, remake the second one. And then no one's going to complain, It'll be fine. You get a lot more leeway. Who's next? I don't know.
That would be me. And Rob was right. I am a car guy. The movie gives me my car moment. Not that I'm a super fan of the Ford Taurus, but it does its job. But there's the scene where RoboCop's tracked Kane and his group back to the old factory, because God, there's so many old factories around this. It must be the same factory. That factory gets a lot of business.
Yes,
no work, but a lot of business with the illegals. But so he gets on there and the car gets blown. He drives in, the car gets blown up, big time, big kaboom, vaporized, and the bad guys run out to the car. It has, in 2 seconds after being blown up, it has instantly basically stopped burning. It is just a can opener peeled back Hulk of a shell of a car with bits of it left. There's no RoboCop inside, which, and I just watched this scene and I went, that's so not how cars work. Like, that's not, they're not paper. They don't burn up like a Chinese lantern set off on the wrong way. I'm like, what are you doing? No. And then it bothered me because RoboCop survives this explosion without a scratch on his fun DuPont color shifting new armor. But yet 10 minutes later, he gets taken apart by regular power tools.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Other than, I get it. The movie redid the first movie, and he's already RoboCop, so they had to take him apart again. But I hated this part from a mechanical standpoint. It just aggravated me to no end.
Yeah,
it was amusing, but it just drove me nuts.
Absolutely, I totally get it, and I think that like there's a lot of things here with that suit that. Hey, more power to them. I get what they're trying to do. I think if you want to go like just on the suit side, I made fun of that it's a bluer, whatever. But like, if you want to go down that route, like, turn him into a car, not legitimately, but like, do maybe, but like, do something very Detroit with RoboCop.
Can you imagine if they gave him a Mandroid scooter from Eliminators?
I just want to see a Dodge Charger, but with RoboCop's head just like on the front grill.
Yes.
Oh, man. You're giving me bad flashbacks of Turbo Teen, man.
Yes.
That was creepy.
Yes.
That was creepy.
Well, let's round it out. Mike, what's your final amusing moment?
Last one, and this is just something I thought was dumb. But just to go back to the sunscreen commercial, where California has no ozone layer, so you can't be in the sun. But you can wear this sunscreen that's like 1 million SPF or something. And it's like this neon blue and green. You just coat your whole body in it. And then like lay out in the sun and sunbathe. But then like the thing at the end is like, oh, application of this sunscreen will result in skin cancer. It's just like it gives you the thing. Like it's just...
Yeah.
It's just... it's like, I don't... Like what is the comment? Like there's the corporation sell us a problem and then sell us a solution that just has the same. I don't. It's just so. It's so dumb.
So dumb. And I'm teetering on like how much more dumb could they have gone with it. But I do love, and not for the horny reasons, everyone. But I do love when you see them start slathering on the sunscreen. It's not like just rubbing on sunscreen. It is like, let me take a handful of this shit and just rub it everywhere.
It's like a 5-gallon ice cream bucket.
Yeah.
Filled with this goop. But Rob, you've seen a lot of reality TV in your time. This was funny in 1990, but this looks like something that probably could happen today. Like, at least in California. LA seems like this could be a thing where the culture of that city would go, we can't give up our pool time.
Well,
we just can't.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, they're freezing everyone. Got to get those cells broken down. They're doing liquid IVs. What other scams can we sell people? So, speaking of scams, Bill, it's time to rate this movie. And we do that in a very particular way. Would you like to... this episode's outside of the paywall. Anytime we have a guest, we bust the episode outside of the paywall. So if you're new, Bill is going to explain to you how we rate films.
That's right. No scam, no extra charges. We will not send you a code to your phone that you should click on and tell us what it is. It's all free. We really do mean it, everybody. But this is a section where we do rate our movie, and it's our patented system, which for this series... I don't know if I redubbed it the right way last time, but we were going to call it, I'll rent that for 5 nights for $1. So back in the day, you went in your video store. There might be a rack somewhere of movies that would say something like that. 5 nights for $1. Any of those movies, take it up to the counter, throw your $1 down, keep it for 1 night, keep it for 5 nights. That's up to you. We don't compare our movies to any of the sequels, anything in this series that we're doing, nothing. Just the movie itself. So we've all gone in to our local video store. We've given them our $1. We've walked out with RoboCop 2. How many of those 5 nights are each of us going to keep it for and enjoy it? So let's see. Rob, it's your series. You pick who goes first.
I'm going with you, Bill.
So, RoboCop 2. It's an amusing movie. It's got some things to say, but they're things that already have been said. It's not really triggering me to kind of look for more to it. If I disavow RoboCop 1, and I try to do that when I watch these movies, you can't help but compare them in some way, but back in the day, I remember a lot of stuff about this movie the first time around. And while I love the action of it, even if it's cartoony, it's still 90s extreme. This is the beginning of the extreme era, and you can see some of that coming through. And it does play like a bit of a Saturday morning cartoon for me. So what I came for the RoboCop, the man turned into machine, the sci-fi elements of it compared with the human stuff and the action movie. I get a lot of that, but I don't get it in a very satisfying way this time around. It's not bad. It's a fun watch, but this movie is a fun watch with your friends. I think this is more of a group movie that you can watch and have a good time with it. By itself, it's okay, but it's just not a movie that I'm going to put in my prime directives of keeping around the house for too long. So I'm probably going to keep RoboCop 2. I'd probably keep it for 3 nights. It's got enough stuff in there that I would want to come back and visit a lot of it on the spot because it is pretty amazing, but I might wind up fast forwarding through a couple of these things. So my actual viewing time might be cut down a little bit on the second viewing, if not the third for sure. But I'm definitely going to keep it around for better than average because it is a better than average movie. Unfortunately, it's about all it is. So That's my rating.
Well, I'll go next. And Mike, you can round us out at the end here. I think that this movie had intentions, right? But the road to hell is paved on good intentions. And this one, the intentions, I believe, were there. But I would have liked to see it more directly approach one idea or 2 ideas rather than just throwing in a bunch of ideas. Graham's idea of having Lewis be the new, like, essentially we made a joke, I think last episode about like the bride of RoboCop, right? Like they don't need to be together as like, but Bride of Frankenstein, spoiler alert, everyone, you only see Bride of Frankenstein for like 2 minutes, but like this idea that a new person, this woman partner is now another good cop and they do these things together, but it like maybe the original RoboCop Murphy is like guiding the process now because it's been learning and evolving. And I would have loved to see then the antagonist sort of plot motivator be a satirical yet serious kind of take on the quote war on drugs, right? And how ridiculous that whole propaganda situation was in the early 90s and 80s, right? The fact that we actually see dare stickers in this movie and it's not a joke is ridiculous. Like you made a movie where it's like a half measure, but like you can't do that in a RoboCop movie. Like that it just doesn't work. You're going to get, folks like us, tearing you into scrap metal about it, but it's there. I enjoyed it. It's not like I had a bad time watching this. I had a lot of fun watching this movie. Could it have been a better sequel? Sure, but it wasn't, and we got what we got. And sometimes the conversation is the journey we needed the whole time anyway, gentlemen. So I'm gonna say, with all that in mind, with the fact that they still made a pretty fun story, I'm going to keep RoboCop 2 for 2.5 nights. I'm going to watch it, maybe throw it on again while I'm cooking dinner the next day. And then the next morning, I'll finish it off and then go, you know what? I'm heading back to the store and I'm going to rent T2 or something, I think, and take that home for another $1. So that's where I'm at. How about you, Mike?
For me, RoboCop 2 is looking back on it, like watching it with fresh eyes recently. There are like those fun moments. Mm-hmm. I like the RoboCop being like just a good like kid friendly icon. And then there's like the moment before that where it's a very like serious, sad moment between RoboCop and his wife, where it's just like, I don't know, like that's hard to kind of make memes of. And if you're like watching with your friends, like, do you make jokes during that? That part's sad.
Yep.
There's like parts to like joke about. There's parts not really to joke about. It's this weird kind of, like you said, it's trying to do a bunch of things when it should have just done 1 or 2 things and really honed in on that. But it's like trying to just continue Murphy's story while like kind of continuing the brand, because now there are cartoons in the mix and comic books down the line. So it just has to like be all these things, and of course nothing can change because RoboCop 3 is going to come out at some point, and who knows what we want to do with it after that. So I think I would probably keep it for 3 nights. I think I would watch it, and then I'd be like, I need to watch like RoboCop to get that taste out of my mouth. And then like after seeing RoboCop, it's like maybe I was too harsh on RoboCop 2. Maybe I should give it another shot. And then I'd give it another shot, watch it that second time like I recently did, and be like, okay, it's not great, but maybe some people are too harsh on it.
Yeah, that's fair. Totally fair. Well, Mike, I am so happy you were able to join us on another episode, and you're welcome back anytime. This has been a blast. Would you like to let everyone know where they can find you if they want to see your media takes?
If you want to see more of Mike Bedard's media takes, follow me on TikTok at cinema_singularity. Do not write out _ You can probably just type Cinema Singularity into TikTok. I don't think anyone else has as needlessly convoluted a name as I do. You'll probably find me. So Cinema Singularity on TikTok is where you can find me. I'm on Instagram, but you don't need to follow me there because I don't do too. That's just my stuff. You don't need to be involved in that.
Has there been any series you've done recently that you found that sparked some sort of joy as of recent over on TikTok? Anything surprising jump out to you?
Just since we talked about it in this episode, I recently did a series on TikTok of movies that weirdly got cartoons and spoke about the RoboCop cartoons.
Yes.
That there was like one in the 80s and then another one like in the late 90s, I think. But a weird trend of like R-rated movies, because there was a Rambo cartoon as well that was basically just G.I. Joe but with Rambo. So like a bunch of like very, very weird cartoons in the 80s and 90s. They were just chasing any IP they could get. But that was I did, because I did that series like a month ago or something, like right before you had contacted me about about doing the podcast. So I was like, well, I know the cartoon. Happy to rewatch RoboCop 2 for this.
That's awesome. Yeah, I last year I believe I watched the Rambo cartoon Christmas episode where like I believe someone kidnapped Santa Claus or something. It was very, very good, and I highly recommend it. Bill.
Wait, so in the world of Rambo, there's Santa?
Yes, exactly.
So when you're watching Rambo Last Blood and he's just like mowing down the cartel, there's just Santa also like in the North Pole doing that's wild. He's digging his fingers into that guy's wound by the truck, and Santa is putting John Rambo on the naughty list at the exact same time. He's like
Santa's writing his name on the list in bullets
and gripping his microphone and going, Rambo, I'm coming for you. With
Rambo,
Cole.
you did me a solid that one time, but rules are rules. You murder 50 people in an afternoon. You go on the naughty list. I'm sorry.
It's the way it is. Hey, Bill, who else do we have to thank so we can call this a night?
Well, we have to thank the always talented Rob Adler for editing our show, taking our voices, making them sound great. You always sound great. The fact that he can do that for me is a miracle. We treasure him. And if you like the show, a large part of what you're hearing, the reason why you like it is Rob's hard work. So thank you, Rob Adler.
Yes. Not me. Rob Adler. Rob Schulte just sits here and makes jokes and goes, hello. Thanks, Rob Adler. And thanks, patrons. Everyone who supports the show and gets all of our paywalled episodes and our Pumpkin Spice podcast episodes. We really appreciate it. Be on the lookout for new shows, series, everything that we do over there. But of course, like I said earlier, anytime we have a guest as good as Mike Bedard, we bust him out of the paywall. So there's much more where that comes from. And we will see you next time on Bill and Rob's An Excellent Adventure.